Okay, welcome guys. I'm going to walk you through this exam in our micro walk and talk and mocks, and it's all on evolution, which is a topic that both seems easy and is equally exceptionally difficult to answer well. Okay. As always, I haven't looked at mark schemes, so I'll run the risk of making a mistake, but it will help you understand how not to make mistakes yourself. So I'll put myself out there. At the start, again, we've emphasised the objectives, so just watch out for these. They are really important. The examiner uses them all the time in the structure of the questions. So the key things from this topic that we need to know are: what's the evidence for the theory of evolution? And it does say includes the contributions of Darwin and Wallace, and molecular evidence and DNA. Describe the different types of variation, including intra and interspecific, continuous and discontinuous, and that comes up quite regularly, and genetic and environmental. Just the little note here, the word causes is actually really important. So they talk about causes, they refer into genetic and environmental. If they're talking about types, then they're referring to continuous and discontinuous, and that you need to watch out for that because it does come up and people write the wrong thing. Describe and explain different types of anatomical, physiological, and behavioural adaptations. Always seems a bit easier until you're asked to say that something is anatomical or physiological. And that is a slight change to the language used at GCSE, so just watch out for that you're nice and confident. Discuss why organisms of different taxonomic groups may show similar anatomical features, including the mole and placental mole. So they both dig and both mole-like, but actually quite different in their evolution. And it discussed the theory of mechanism of natural selection, which again we always think, oh yeah, we do that at GCSE, it's just the easiest giraffe with long necks. It's a little bit more to it than that, and these questions will drill down to see you truly understand that. And what's the implications for human populations, particularly pesticide and herbicide resistance and drug resistance, so MRSA and superweeds. Right, so they are the bits that's really important. As always, if I speak too fast, just slow me down YouTube. Right, first one then. So it says these two organisms show very similar anatomical adaptations, but are classified in different taxonomic groups. I was going to point out that last statement that we just came up about how they showed similar anatomical features. This is examples where the examiners are literally picking an objective and writing a question about it. So what is this an example of? We've got a dolphin, I've got a shark, both looking fish-like. It's not the closest of two examples that they could have picked, but what is the correct name for that one? Well, you've got, if you're a little bit stuck, okay, you might instantly know what the answer is convergent evolution. But if you're a little bit stuck, think about the word in itself. Convergent means coming together. Divergent means coming apart. Disruptive, disruptive selection is when you end up with two populations. You might remember these graphs where you have two peaks, that you have two kind of, if this was size down the bottom yet, two different size groups of animals. Most common example is the salmon, where you get little ones and big ones and not many medium ones. But it also says selection. And stabilising selection, well, that's the opposite, where you encourage no evolution to take place because both extremes are selected against. Those two don't seem to make any sense to this context, and so it's down to evolution. And as I said, it's convergent. But make sure we're confident in all four words, not just the right answer. Right, little note, this is one of the worst things examiners do. It says, read the following 5 statements, and there's a little tiny star there, and that means it's about quality of communication and extended response. And so they're going to judge you in a slightly different way. So let's look at the information first of all. So it says mutations preventing lactose intolerance have occurred in humans at various times in the prehistoric past and in all human races. So there's questions about lactose intolerance. Hopefully you know that you are not, mostly probably, lactose intolerant, or the majority of the population is not, at least. But some people are. Domestication of large lactating mammals like goats and cattle, in case you know what lactating mammals are, arose in Europe and Africa 5 to 10,000 years ago. The lowest levels of lactose intolerance are found in areas like European country populations, and North America. So it's low of the intolerance. So most people in these countries can drink or consume lactose. The ability of agricultural populations to digest the milk as well as the meat of animals is advantageous. It adds to their general nutrition. And until recent times, the Australian Aborigines have been isolated on that island for around 50,000 years. So quite a long time ago they've been stuck for. Compare it to this date, 5 to 10,000 years ago when we domesticated domestic animals like goats. So it says suggest how, so this always kind of means you've got to pull in all your other knowledge, how lactose intolerance phenotype came to be present in only 5% of the population, like Europeans, but came to be present in 97% of the Australian Aboriginals. Use information given and knowledge Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. So this is the sort of question that needs to be very clear in your own mind. Are we talking about you can drink milk or you can't? So let's be clear. It says lactose intolerance comes to be present in only 5% of Europeans. So i.e. 95% of Europeans can drink milk. And hopefully you've made that link. Versus only 3% of Aborigines can drink milk. So be quite clear on that. And right at the start it says mutations preventing lactose intolerance have occurred. So this is the newer evolved version of humans, as it were. Not the best term, but it's one way to help you understand. And it's going to be a whopping 9 marks. They're interesting. When I reviewed like previous year's groups on this exam pack, they score very well. And I suspect they're marking very generously when they've been self-assessing. So I'm going to type this answer because you'll never read that much handwriting. And because it's 9 marks, what I want to do, first of all, before I launch into it, is just think about what the structure of it needs to be, because that's really, really, really key. If it's extended response, there's always a mark band 1, 2, and 3, and you want to be in this kind of top mark band. So you want to be in mark band 3, where you can get 7 to 9 marks. And in there's going to be a statement that says you need to have done this and this to get that set of marks. So you need to decide what this and this is going to be. It's never just write 9 points about natural selection. So we're going to look at the question. It's talking about a comparison between Europeans and Aborigines. So in the absence of anything else, it also talks about evolution, natural selection. So I know that in my answer, I need to include Darwin's evolution. And I must discuss both Aborigines, which I probably can't spell, and Europeans. So if I don't split my answer into half my points about these and half my points about Europeans, I'm actually not going to get into that top mark band. And that is key to just getting the top marks on these. Now, some of you might do that straight away. Some questions are certainly more obvious than others, but you must ask yourself, when you see the star, what will the mark scheme look like at the end? And in a minute, we'll have a look just to see how we've done. So I'm not going to write this out in full, but what I am going to do is just pick out some of the points I would include in this answer so that you can then structure your own answer and compare it. So I'd be looking for the fact that in a population there's a mutation. I'm just going to rough out some points first of all, and then I could turn this into a proper answer in a minute. There's a mutation. What does that do? It leads to a new allele. And at A level, you need to be talking about alleles and not genes, because it's not a new gene, it's just a new version of that gene. What's going to happen to that allele? Well, that allele offers a selective advantage. Let's say why, because people with it digest lactose in milk. What's the consequence of that? Okay, they're able to reproduce and produce more children. Or offspring would be better, wouldn't it? So that's your sort of almost your GCC bit, isn't it? Now, there's mutation that leads to, I've said what the adaptation is, okay, I've said things survive and reproduce, and again, I'm going to say allele. And that might be where some people would stop and just give themselves 4 marks, but actually I would suspect that hasn't discussed either population, and you're going to be stuck in that bottom mark category of maxed out of 1. Let's go a little bit further. The allele will Right, but what I need to do is link that back to the question now, and the question really is about the difference in each population and the animals. So it says, mutation event lactose intolerance occurred in humans at various times in the prehistoric past and in all human races. So in a way, that's saying, okay, the mutation will have occurred in both so it can occur in both populations. However, okay, and I'm trying to put in some of these dates. There's a selective function in the European population. Only when there was a domestication of animals 5,000–10,000 years ago. So now you see when I'm starting to link it to both populations. And why is that allele lost? Because we start to see now again, which is something we'll come back to next year, the idea in very small populations, it's not guaranteed an allele will appear in each child. And if you've got a population, let's say, of 2 people, man and wife, or lady and husband, let's not be incorrect, if they have a child, there's no guarantee that they both pass on a particular allele, like the allele for blue eyes, and so suddenly the child gets both the parents' brown eye alleles, and he has to find a partner, maybe sister, let's not go there, and then that blue eye allele was totally lost. So in small populations, alleles can be lost. It's a concept we'll revisit in year 13, or you have revisited if you are year 13. And so what's that mean? This is called due to something called genetic drift. So that might be a new term. All right, so we can have a little sort of check now in terms of points I've made, okay, and making sure I've sort of started making else. So I've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've written in quite a structured way, and I've got this sort of slightly longer points here. 6, probably go with 7 there. 8. So I do this kind of check. Now I'm going to stop here, but this is I for me think I'm in the sort of 7 to 8 marks, a sort of category, and so I want to then develop that onto a little bit more to get to 9 or 10 points, except an examiner might not like all of my points. Let's just look at the mark scheme at the end. And they are like an examiner, they're kind of rather tedious to read through because it's quite a lot. So I'm always going to look in this mark category here, but try and look at the differences. And it says, look, there is extensive reference being made to prehistorical circumstances of both populations. And then learning demonstrates a good grasp of Darwinian theory of evolution. If I scroll down, what I'm looking for is a difference. It says reference to be made to both populations, and some inferences about natural selection. So maybe natural selection is not strong, but the killer is reference to be made to pre-industrial of at least one of the populations. So if you haven't got 2, you're going to be stuck in this category. Okay, you must have made 2 to get into the other category. And then once we've got that, so I've got both groups, I need to have points in both of them to get to those higher marks. And then looking at what I've got, so look, I've got the pre-agricultural gene pool includes the mutant. Values of milk acted as a positive selection pressure. We said that they are going to become more common because there is now milk from those lactating animals. Better chance of survival or reproductive success. There's a phrase there, directional selection. Okay, that's sort of going that a bit deep that I said you perhaps needed to write in. That mutant allele accumulates, we discussed that. Again, genetic drift in small populations. So we said on the opposite side why it's lost. We didn't mention anything about its dominance, so I didn't feel there was information given enough to make that suggestion. But that is the case in this situation. And that again is the heterozygotes. That means you have one copy which show that feature versus the Australian Aborigines. Okay, there was no selection for mutant alleles. So it's not denying it was there. Again, it's what we said. It could be there, but it was no selection pressure for it. Because they don't have any mammals. I didn't spell that out. I said there was only mammals on the other side of things, and maybe I could have spelled it out a bit more. On the island, there's no borders for suitable mammals to come in, so perhaps you didn't discuss Australia enough because that was given. So there's no opportunity for the movement of this allele. So there's no way that allele can come into the Aboriginal population in higher numbers. So that's another aspect as well. So as I say, if I was marking my own work, I'd have given it about 7 to 8 marks. And to give more marks, I would perhaps have discussed Australia a little bit more and the gene flow in Australia. So that's quite a tough question, and that's why I want to be quite harsh in self-marking it and just see how I've structured it. But more importantly, to take a message, how did I approach building up my answer? Because that's a bit you'll remember for another day. Right, let's just finish off. Bats are the only mammals that have wings. Many species of bat hunt flying insects at night. It's going to be important, isn't it? Bats are able to use echolocation in order to help them find prey in the dark. Explain why bats, birds are not closely related, but both evolve wings. Again, this was this earlier objective, wasn't it, about anatomical similarity. And so that the reason behind this is about selection pressures, isn't it? They both have similar selection pressures. They both hunt. There it says it there, isn't it? We know birds eat insects, and also both can fly to escape predators. The other side of things. So am I happy? This is 3 marks. Similar selection pressures. I was going to say it's going to be 1, isn't it? Both hunt flying insects. Both can fly to escape predators. Potentially that could be in the same marking category. So I really want a third point that I'm going to add in. So I'm going to go therefore natural. Evolution, sorry, of wings. Remember, the birds and the bat have got wings, but they are very different in the way they're structured. A bat is its extended fingers, and a bird is extended arms. So again, I've got 3 points, but I'm always asking myself how many marks and what can I add in to ensure I've got my marks. I'm always writing in a sort of structured, bulleted way. Suggest why the vast majority of bird species have not evolved the ability to echolocate. Well, there's 2 ways you could go about this. Really, it's I could consider that it's never arisen, but I think the bigger that's quite a set of mutations to lead that ability. However, I think the bigger clue here is about this night time, and that's what I've said at night time. So I'm going to go with most birds are not nocturnal. Because it doesn't ask me for one reason, I am going to just develop this answer without contradicting myself, and the mutation had not occurred. So I've kind of hedged my bets a little bit. Again, I've linked in, which is, but because it says suggests, it doesn't ask me for one reason. I can give sort of 2 and not be penalised. These aren't contradictory points, and so I might get away with it. And then it's just me trying to think a little bit deeper and not go my first answer. Explain how biological molecules can provide evidence that species have evolved. Oh, actually refers to different types of molecule in your answer. So this is important. 4 marks. Well, the key thing is about evidence of evolution. Remember back at the start. This is why we hammer about objectives, molecular evidence. So what's my 2 types of molecule? My 2 types of molecule are DNA, but also proteins. Clearly, there is a big link there. It's really useful to give some examples, and so some common examples are hemoglobin as a really important one, and I go on about it all the time, cytochrome C. DNA, we've also got RNA as well in there. So how can they be used as one evidence of evolution? Well, what we can look at is gradual changes in these molecules over time. So I'm just making sure I've got the right. Now this is a topic I teach all the time, so I'm just making sure before I launch an answer that it is asking what I think it's asking and not what I want it to ask. It's asking for evidence that evolution species evolved or that evolution has taken place. So I possibly need to mention 2 animals. So now I've got my sort of structure. I would sort of say 2 animals can be compared. Differences, because this is about how it provides evidence as well, not just difference in molecules, differences between. So here I go, either nucleotide sequences or amino acid sequences. That's what seq can be compared. So I'm looking about how those differences are compared between the 2, and then I would if I wrote this out neatly, I would say it was DNA and proteins, hemoglobin, cytochrome C. Has this showing evidence of evolution? That's what I'm a little bit nervous of. I need to say that how they have changed over time. In hemoglobin and cytochrome C, we don't see lots of changes in parts that affect how well it works. We do see lots of changes in parts that don't affect how it works. So that kind of gives us a hint about natural selection. Let's just have a look at how they worded it then. So they have said, either in samples from 2 species, there's a similarity, a sequence similarity in our 2 groups of molecules. There we go, nucleic acids, DNA. And we've also got proteins down here as well. And it implies an evolutionary relationship. And then a difference in divergence implies the evolutionary distance. So that's the bit I hadn't yet got on to talk about, how the fact is the more different they are, the longer ago they separated. And again, down here, the primary sequence shows the same kind of pattern. And it says allow named examples, and it's definitely worth memorising named examples.